Get ready for a new episode of KP Talks Dollars and Cents. Learn financial literacy and get real-time updates on all things housing, finance, and real estate with your host, Kevin Perenio. As an owner and C-level executive for 20 plus years in finance, KP is here to serve you with all of his knowledge and experience. Whether you're a broker, realtor, or just interested in the economy, this is the podcast for you. So let's get started. Here's your host, Kevin Perenio.
Hey, it's KP coming to you live from Corona, California. Well, we got housing start data coming out here in about 3 hours. For those of you that do the math, for me and my late night here on the West Coast, apologize for not getting a video out to you Thursday. I actually recorded one. I watched it in my quality control team. We didn't like what I wrote and what I said, and I didn't like the way it was going to come out, and I deleted it, and you'll never see it. So I apologize for only getting one video out last week. But we do have some news that came out. The forbearance data in July has decreased to 0.74%. Now, remember a year ago this month, the director, Mark Calabria of the FHFA, hit the entire industry with a 50 basis point adverse market fee, a tax on the American homeowner of 50 basis points. Can you imagine what rates would be like right now when home affordability, according to National Association of Realtors, in June hit like the lowest number in like 2 decades or some crazy 3 decades? Can you imagine what 50 extra basis points would be doing right now when we had the fastest rise in interest rates at the beginning of this year in the shortest amount of time ever? Anyway, good riddance to that fee. But that happened a year ago, by the way. And there are some taxes being raised in D.C., and I'll talk about that with the Inflation Reduction Act. Not to be confused with the individual retirement account. It's different IRA. This is a different kind of investment in your future, which includes raising taxes, and we will get into that in a little bit. But other than housing start data that's coming out, on Wednesday, we have retail sales. Super important. 70% of the economy, 70% of the GDP is based on consumer spending. Are they holding up? Are they still spending? Even if things are more expensive, are they still spending on more expensive things? I'll touch on that in just a second. And then I believe on Thursday, we have existing home sales data. So let's talk about consumers and what they're spending on. Last week, I talked a little bit about the CPI and the PPI report on the video that you will never see. The Consumer Price Index came out last week, and that's basically the price of goods and items that the consumers pay. About 40% of that is housing type costs. That continues to go up and at a healthy clip. Food and energy, which is more volatile, which in the core CPI number, they strip those numbers out, even though human beings in America aren't allowed to strip out eating food and heating and cooling their homes or gassing up their vehicles if they're not in an EV, which I'll talk about an EV subsidy if I have enough time in the Inflation Reduction Act. But the CPI numbers, the headline number was actually down. So you went from 9.1% to 8.5%. So all the talk of peak inflation is kicking back up again. So we had like a really crazy high 500,000 plus jobs report created for the month of July, which everyone's saying that gives the Fed the green light to make things even tighter and do 75 basis point hike coming up in their September Fed Open Market Committee meeting. But then a week later, the CPI price index, consumer price index, is actually a little lower. So did we reach peak inflation? I mean, look, it's still pretty high, 8.5%. And even if you strip out food and energy, the volatile components, the core inflation is still relatively high as well. I think it's something like, 5.9%. So it's still pretty high, much higher than the inflation rate, wage growth rates, the Fed funds rates. So the Fed is more than likely still going to do 75 basis point hike. I will say there was also a PPI number that came out last week. That's the producer price index. That's the cost of the input costs to make the goods that producers create, which end up being bought as 70% of the economy's GDP by consumers. That came down just a little bit as well. So CPI and PPI, not as high as expected, still elevated, still high, but down from record levels. So there's one more big PPI and CPI print that comes out before the next Fed open market committee meeting. There's also the Fed's preferred number, the PCE and the CP, which is like consumer price expenditures and producer price expenditures. Those are a different read, if you will, on inflation. So we'll see that number as they come out. Okay, so some costs are coming down, still elevated year over year, and we still are fighting inflation. And demand destruction is taking place. And when demand destruction takes place, the economy slows down. What does the bond market know that the stock market doesn't know? Now, I am not your financial advisor. I am not a licensed anything in the financial services by any means. I am not responsible for your losses, only your profits. But the stock market's been rallying since the June 13th low, which also happened to be the high in mortgage interest rates and the high of the 10-year Treasury at 350. Things have gone in a positive manner for about 2 months. What is going on? Are we having a bear market rally? Are we just bouncing off the low, although still in an overall downtrend? You know, you've got 10-year, 2-year yield curves inverted, which are recessionary signals. You've got weekly jobless claims continuing to rise, which is recessionary. You still have heightened inflation, and you've got the Fed still saying they're going to hammer the Fed funds rate, which, if you look at housing, which has been a canary in the coal mine, it has been a signal for the broader economy. It led us out of the pandemic-induced recession, and it seems to be leading us into whenever the next recession is. We already have 2 quarters in a row of negative GDP, which used to be pretty much, that was a signal that we were in a recession. But job losses haven't really taken place, and unemployment hasn't really ticked up, although they may have both found their peak of greatness and only get worse from here. Time will tell. We will watch the data. But having said all that, if we are having what's a bear market rally, if we are just having a bounce, the bond market doesn't think that we're going to see growth. If they thought that we would see a growing economy, you would likely see the 10-year Treasury yield rise. But it's been pretty range bound. It's been held pretty much between 255 and a 285 mark. That's considerably down from a 350 mark, 348 at the peak of June 12th and June 13th. So the bond market, the smartest people on Wall Street, the bond traders, the fixed income securities peeps, they don't seem to think that there's growth on the horizon. The Fed still has to start quantitative tightening, by the way, which means running off their balance sheet of mortgage-backed securities and treasuries. And that, of course, will impact the prices of mortgage interest rates. We shall see. Okay, now before I tiptoe into the most political way I can about what's going on in our business, I will say that the peer data that we reviewed through the first 6 months of the year, PRMG was only down about 19% through June, year over year. Most of the industry was down between 35 and 65%. The industry hit the brakes with these high interest rates, which I said peaked in June. And July was one of the toughest months in over 3 years for our industry. Only $129.5 billion in mortgage-backed securities of Fannie, Freddie, and Ginnie, that's agency mortgage-backed securities, were traded in the month of July. That is way down. And so that will end up being lower fundings, not just in July, but also in August. Q3 is likely the low point of the cycle. Potentially Q4 and Q1 around the same levels between now and when the next purchase season of spring kicks off. Let's call it mid-February. These are going to be the roughest waters in our industry. Bloomberg data gave me that $129.5 billion, and they project the remaining 5 months of the year to only have $800 billion in mortgage-backed agency business. It's $160 billion per month. So we saw Loan Depot shut down their wholesale channel. Unfortunately, it's really great people working for that company, which has been a really great company in its own right. But these are signs of companies trying to make moves strategically in where they want to focus their efforts, where they want to focus their money and their time. And so we're going to see more changes. We've had closes with First Guarantee Mortgage Corp, Sprout, and there will be more to come. So we'll keep an eye on that. No one's dancing over the tombstones here. It sucks when people lose jobs. A lot more to talk about. I want to get into the Inflation Reduction Act, but we'll do it on Thursday. Have a good one. Cheers.
Hey, it's KP coming to you live from Culver City. Last time I was on this construction site, it was scraped to the ground. For those of you who remember the slab there. So we got some framing. We got some steel here. I'll give you a little tour here in just a second, but I know I normally don't do videos on back-to-back days, but we had housing start data come out this morning. So the video I put out at 4 a.m. and then went home and got 3 hours of sleep and got up and grinded all day. Drove out here to Culver City. See some mountains there in the background. Got a nice little view here. It's like right back there. So this is there's no staircase, by the way. You had to get a little rough and take this ladder up here. My buddy Jason is quite the visionary when it comes to designing. He and I went to University of Texas together. He was an architect. He's probably hiding over here. I don't know where he's at. You may see, oh, there he is. He's hiding. So this is the master hallway, and that right there is, a little skylight, a little view. Got a little bedroom over there. Jack and Jill bedrooms back in here. Bathroom, balcony. Another one over here. There's a whole downstairs, which is awesome, with a great room. And this is the master. This is the door into the master, which has its own little master deck, a little patio right here. All this will be walled off with glass. And of course, typical LA, there's power lines everywhere. So we'll put some hedging up there, make it look pretty. But here we got guys and gals who like the walk-in closets. Got a lot of space here. We got a little private bath. I promise I'm going to talk about economic data. I'm not just giving you a full-blown tour here. But it's exciting to do this kind of project. This is all the master. And there is all kinds of little gizmos and gadgets. There's the pool down there. If you remember, that's where that building was that was still up. And this whole thing is an RDU with sliding glass doors and, good little area. Could be another bedroom. I want to thank Jeff Tesh and Chris Doran and the people at RCN Capital making this possible with the financing. So thank you very much. So housing starts were down 10% from June to July. But by the way, that tree is absolutely gorgeous. And so this is all like glass, so you can see it. My buddy Jason said he was going to put 3 lights over here and just like shine them up on the neighbor's light. I told him to ask permission, although I don't know if it's a crime to shine a light on someone's tree. We'll see. But yeah, housing starts are down 10%, and we're at about a 1.47 million run rate for annualized, down from a 1.55 million. So even permits were down a little bit. So what's interesting is 2 home builders in America control 53.5% of all single-family residence construction. And I think it's important to talk about the home builders. We talk about a lack of supply all the time in housing, and there is. And I don't see any light at the end of the tunnel. But I don't blame the home builders. I mean, think if you're D.R. Horton or Lennar, both fantastically run companies with amazing leadership. They find land, they buy land years in advance, they go through all the expensive bureaucracy and permitting process and finishing out the land, building out their communities and marketing it. And it's a long haul to do that. And, a year ago in May, lumber prices were absolutely insane. They've come down about halfway back, a little more. But, why put all this excess inventory out there when you know the economy is potentially slowing? You've got rising interest rates. Nobody bailed out the builders during the Great Recession back in 2008. For those that aren't in the business, the only lenders that made it were either medium size like us And some of the large ones, by the way, today were schmedium back then. Your Rockets, or UWMs, your Caliber barely even existed. It's actually an old team that came out of the first Magnus rubble, and place I used to work back starting in 01. Loan Depot was, all these companies that are big today were the right size during the crash. Only the banks got bailed out by the government. And that's an important part, because the government thinks that banks are the ones to bet on because they're so well capitalized. The reality is nobody survived it without money. But you know who bailed out the builders? Nobody. Nobody bailed out the builders. The people that actually create the product that we have to live in and put a roof over our head for shelter. Nobody bailed them out. So I can't blame them for being conservative and making sure that they don't get out over their skis. Because if you remember the credit bubble that we had, they were building spec homes and they were just putting money out there and product out there and resources out there, and they got clipped. And now there's just a couple builders that control the majority of the stock and supply. Now, there are some other builders out there. There's probably another 7 or so of pretty gigantic size. But a neighborhood like this, like in Culver City, you're not going to see these giant builders come in and build this stuff. You see custom home builders like my buddy Jason and his crew. He's got about 5 or 6 projects going at any given time. And what's amazing about this place is here in Culver City, that is the Amazon studio. That is the old Culver City studios. That's right, movie studios. And back there is another Amazon studio. And most of these people in this neighborhood own their home. They're not renters. So they love this construction. Even though some lady just came and asked us if the nail that was in her tire was from us. And luckily it was a roofing nail, and we haven't started roofing yet. So we're like, sorry, lady. I'm parked out front too. I don't want a nail either. But custom home builders have a long runway ahead of them. And, we need housing supply. It's bottom line. We need houses. We're building, 10 million every, or 20, something like 20 million units every decade, something crazy like that. I think that's the right number, or 10 million, I believe is the number. We're 5 million short. All I know is we're a little under 5 million short of where we should be, because we have a lost decade, basically from 2010 to 20. And now demand has been squelched a little bit with higher interest rates, but our good friends over there at MBS Highway, they do a good job of breaking down the information. They put out, I have not looked at the video, but the headline was pretty interesting. There's still about 40% of homes being sold are in a bidding war with 3.5 bidders. I mean, it's down from the peak of 70% of homes back in January having a bidding war, but it's way higher than pre-pandemic in 2019, as they cited on MBS Highway, where only 10% of homes had a bidding war. Still a very healthy, strong market in the worst part of purchase season. As we, about to start school, it gets a little soft between now and February, and then as certain markets start to thaw out, we have our spring purchase season that kicks off. Locks start picking up in February, and really start kicking up, all the way from March through June. I'll add one more thing. Altos research with Mike Simonson. They have some good information talking about, they have weekly videos. You got to watch this stuff on YouTube. These guys are awesome. Mike is on there every week doing videos. He basically is showing week by week the housing supply and the stock and all the information. And he is projecting, as of right now, we're about 38% of listings have price reductions, and that will probably peak here in the next 60 days. And that would be just a little bit in the low 40s. And we have we're down week over week from 450 medium home price to 449K, according to his research. And he sees that getting down to about 415,000 median home price, and potential flat home appreciation for 2023. And that's just bringing our market back to a normal market. And that's okay, considering how high we've run. So couple that, slowing down to a normal market, together with slowing economy. When will the Fed say, okay, and potentially inflation being peaked? When will the Fed say, okay, we did our job? I'll report back to you. I'll probably do another video maybe Thursday night. I got invited, for those of you that know, I'm a big fan of Picasso, P-A-C-A-S-O. Please check it out. I was invited to a soiree in Santa Monica here in a couple hours. And Spencer Raskoff is one of the co-founders. He's also the founder and original CEO of Zillow. So hopefully get a chance to see him and talk to him about things going on. He's got a big LA tech investment fund that he's part of. And obviously he and Austin Allison, the founder of .loop, they're co-founders of Picasso. So I'll report back if anything cool happens there. Cheers.
You've been listening to KP Talks Dollars and Cents, a top-rated show for those who want to learn about the economy and mortgage environment. Tune in each week for more episodes, and please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Kevin Perenio does not render or offer to render personalized investment or tax advice through KP Talks Dollars and Cents. The information provided is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial, tax, investment, or legal advice. For more info, follow KP Talks Dollars and Cents on all of our social channels.